Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information will be U.S. Notes 4.4, The Early Cold War Foreign Policies, Part 1. It includes information aligned with the first section of your Unit 4 study guide. Remember, you have control over this lecture, so pause whenever you need, use your study guide to help you figure out what's important, write down those questions you have, and re-watch whenever you need to. So make sure you have that study guide with you, and let's go ahead and get started. I mentioned in the last set of notes that the U.S. had an overarching foreign policy plan known as containment after World War II. This was geared towards containing communism to the areas in which it already existed. The U.S. did not try to get rid of communism in those areas. Rather, they worked to stop it from spreading into new areas. The question you may have now is, so how did the U.S. try to stop the spread of communism? That's an excellent question, and that's what we'll answer today. The first action the U.S. took was called the Marshall Plan. Following World War II, many of the European countries were struggling to recover from the fighting, both physically and financially. The U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall saw this and developed a plan to help these countries. In part, this plan said the U.S. will aid any and all European countries who need it. This is not directed against any country, but fighting against hunger, poverty, desperation, and chaos. And here you can see some of the countries and kind of how much money we gave to each country. In the end, the Marshall Plan actually resulted in 16 different European countries receiving $12.5 billion, with a B, dollars, in aid from the U.S. The Soviet Union actually did qualify for the help, but they refused the money, so they didn't want our help. Ultimately, the goal of the Marshall Plan was to create goodwill with these recovering countries and to show them that capitalism works and makes a country prosperous, so kind of to promote our ideas to them. The second U.S. policy I want to talk about today is the Truman Doctrine. President Truman, for whom the doctrine is named, strongly believed it was the U.S. duty to contain communism. He supported any policy that attempted that goal. So this particular policy is named after him, the Truman Doctrine. The Soviet Union was pushing to increase their sphere of influence during the time, or those areas they had control over, without actually taking over new countries. So they also desired a warm water port because ports in Russia would freeze in the winter, which made trade on ships impossible for part of the year. Because of the desire for a warm port and a sphere of influence, the Soviets were putting pressure on Turkey to allow them to control a port in Turkey. This is where the Truman Doctrine is going to come in. So Turkey had been resisting the Soviets with the military and financial aid from Great Britain. However, the British were drained from World War II, and they just couldn't supply Turkey any longer. They couldn't help them with aid. So the U.S. took over, sending aid to both Turkey and to Greece, because Greece was also being pressured by the Soviet Union, in order to keep those Mediterranean countries resisting communism and to keep it out of those countries. That helped Turkey and Greece, and that aid was approved in the document called the Truman Doctrine. In total, the U.S. actually sent over $660 million to stop communism from spreading to Greece and Turkey, and to keep the Soviets from having a warm water port, which would have made them more competition economically. So these are just two examples of policies that were used in the 40s and 50s to contain communism. We have two more we'll look at in this section of our unit, and those will be in the next set of notes. So this is the end of U.S. Notes 4.4. If you have any questions, bring those to class. I hope you learned something.